Hello to all my friends and all of my issues. It's me, Mario. Woohoo! Mamma mia! You guys, you number one. Woohoo! Oh yeah, number one. Ho ho! Wait to say it, bro. Here we go. Woohoo!
Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of All of My Issues. In this episode, episode 16, we got the opportunity to sit down and talk with comic book legend Ron Frenz. He's worked on every major comic book character you can think of. He's worked on Spider-Man, Superman. He worked on Thor for 7 years. He helped create the New Warriors. He co-created Spider-Girl. The list goes on. He's been in every major comic book you can think of, pretty much. But before we get into the chat that we had with him, let's talk about Geek Fuel. If you're anything like us, and let's face it, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are, you enjoy geeky things, and one of the best ways to get your monthly geek on is to subscribe to Geek Fuel. Geek Fuel will send you a monthly box filled with comic book, gaming, sci-fi, and pop culture related material. Do you like Marvel? Do you like DC? Chances are you're going to get something from both of those companies at one point or another once you subscribe. So right now, if you go to our website, allofmyissues.com, and click the Geek Fuel link, you can save $3 off of your Geek Fuel subscription. You can use those $3 to purchase the new project that Ron Frenz is working on with Darren Henry from Sit Comics, called The Blue Baron. You can purchase it now off of Comixology. All right, let's get started. I did want to just say that, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast. First off, I wanted to get that out of the way. So we're happy.
Well, it's my pleasure. I enjoy doing these things. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're curious about and all that kind of jazz. So, it's my pleasure. It really is.
Awesome. Because I would go as far as to say, I don't want to just speak. I guess I'm speaking for myself as saying that I'm a pretty big fan of your work.
He's not just speaking for himself. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad. And, you sound like Chris Pratt.
Oh, really? I think that's probably a compliment, right?
That's a pretty good compliment.
And I look just like him, so it's...
It's a compliment. You sound like, because I'm fascinated with voices. And there was a guy, I don't know if you've ever met him, I can't think of his name because I suck. But it's the young guy that does comic shenanigans.
Oh, okay.
And he sounds like a Canadian Paul Rudd.
Oh, get out of here.
So between you guys, we could start doing Marvel movies on the radio.
Yeah, right. There we go. That's all we need. Right?
All right, guys.
I love it. Well, I guess, it seems like maybe one of the things we'll just kind of start off with is we did look a little bit into your background, not to be creepy or anything, but we did look a little bit into your background. Okay. And we saw it seemed like you started in the industry rather young. It seemed to us 24, right? Is that right?
Yeah, actually it would have been more like 23, but yeah, exactly. That's right. Good looking. Yeah, my first gig was I got the call. See, I went to a 2-year art school out of high school. So okay. I guess I would have graduated there. And let's see, graduated high school at 18, 19, 20, 21, something like that at the most. And I had gotten a job. I had shown some samples to Jim Shooter at a local comic shop because he's from the Pittsburgh area.
Oh, okay. And I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he looked at my samples at a shop appearance, and a couple other guys too. And that conversation ended with him, very, very hopeful for me because he walked out going, and I guess you and I will be talking. And I'm like, wow, okay, cool.
Oh, man, yeah.
but I didn't hear anything, and I tried. This was back in the day. This would have been 82, 83, in the early 80s. So I would go to my art school that I went to, that I was a graduate of, and they had something that used to be called a Watts line, where you could make long-distance phone calls with no charge.
Oh, okay.
And I would go down there and use that phone to call Marvel Comics. And of course, if you call Marvel Comics, say, I'd like to talk to Jim Shooter because he said I might have a job, they say, oh, I'm sorry, he's joined the French Foreign Legion. And
Yeah.
things like that. So that didn't work out. And so what ended up happening was I went on a few other job interviews, and I went on a job interview for a local animation house that did local and regional animation spots. And the guy was just looking for somebody who could draw. Who could storyboard for him and do character designs for him and could just draw without reference and all that. So he liked that in my portfolio, and he took me out to lunch and he said, now I know your plan, your goal is to work for Marvel Comics. I've wanted to do it since I was 8 years old. He said, but so I got a question for you. If I take the time to train you in animation and Marvel crooks its finger, do you just leave me in the lurch and all this time I've invested in you is wasted? And I kind of sat there chewing, and he went, this is where you say no, Ron. I never do that to you.
Yeah.
And I went, no, I would never do that to you. So what ended up happening was when Marvel did call, I took the job with the animation studio. He hired me, and I was working for him for a couple of years. When Marvel finally did call, my first contact was Al Milgrom. He handed the phone to Louise Jones, who is now Louise Simonson, and she offered me a fill-in on Kesar. It was issue 17, actually. And, of course, I took it. And what ended up happening was, because of my promise to the guy that ran the animation studio, I stayed at the animation studio and did my freelance for Marvel at night. He was also very understanding, so if we didn't have something that was going on at the studio that day, if we weren't really busy at the studio, I was allowed to work on my Marvel stuff there as well. And I did both for, I guess, a couple of years.
Wow.
Because I did that through Kesar, because I did the fill-in on Kesar. They liked it enough that they offered me number 16 after I had just finished 17. So I did that. Then they gave me a King Conan, and then they offered me King Conan as a series.
Wow, nice.
And I turned it down because I didn't think I was ready to try to handle a regular monthly schedule. Then they offered me Kesar as a series, and I was afraid they'd stop offering, so I took it.
Gotcha.
And so I did Kesar. My run on Kesar was done while I was still working at the animation studio. My run from there, I did like a couple of, while I was doing Kesar, I did some Indiana Jones fill-ins, blah, blah, blah. I did Star Wars while I was still working at the animation studio. I did Marvel Team Up while I was still working at the animation studio.
Oh, nice.
It was when I was offered The Amazing Spider-Man that I reached that crossroads where, comics isn't going to get any more stable than being offered a monthly title like Spider-Man. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I also told myself that, nobody else could be counted on to care as much as I did, so I'd give it 110%. So I took that, and it was at that point that I opted to leave the animation studio, and the rest, as they say, is history now. So does that give you a thumbnail anyway? So yeah. 23 was when my first Marvel stuff came out. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's young.
Well, I mean, for me as a kid, I'm not that much younger than you in the grand scheme of things, but I was probably in about fifth grade whenever you were in Spider-Man. So I guess to me, I just thought anyone who was working in comics had to be much, much older. So 24 didn't, I had all of these strange illusions, and I've mythologized the Marvel bullpen since a young age. So.
I can understand that to a certain degree. Yeah, when you hear that Jim Shooter was writing the Legion at 13,
Well, yeah.
Relative the ancient, that kind of thing. I know at the time what you were saying, I was kind of the opposite because I had never heard of Tom DeFalco. I had seen his name on some DC Superman family stories, some Jimmy Olsen shorts and all this kind of stuff. And so I was aware of the name. But when he was named as the editor of the Spider-Man titles, I said, how does some kid who doesn't know anything get awarded the Spider-Man titles? That's insane, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
As I was reading about it in the bullpen bulletins, and, of course, once I got to know Tom and realized he's about 10 years older than I am. He's in much better shape, but he's 10 years older than I am. And, so all of that perception that he was just some young punk kid, I was completely unaware of his entire career at Archie and, his career at DC and the writing he had done for Marvel before he was given the Spider-Man titles, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's always amazing what somebody's window of references.
Sure.
Yeah.
The people that know me for the Marvel stuff know me for the Marvel stuff and sometimes don't know the other stuff I've done. And I've run into people at conventions who know me from Superman and don't know I'm a Marvel guy.
Really?
I mean, I've talked to people at conventions who thought I came out of nowhere and got on Superman. There you go. That's okay. Well, that's only, it's 79% of my career that you're unaware of. So, okay. You like the Superman stuff?
Yeah.
So, it can be bizarre that way, too. But, you only know what you know, and even with all the names on all the books, I mean, these days there's so many titles that it's hard to know everybody's name anymore.
Yeah.
That's probably true, yeah.
And it's hard to keep up with everything, too. It's...
I gave up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like you had quite a partnership with Tom DeFalco then because you got Did you first meet him on Amazing Spider-Man then?
Well, no, he hired me on Team Up.
On Team Up? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was the editor of the Spider-Man titles at a time where he had Spider-Man guest starred. It kind of worked the way it's supposed to work, really. Spider-Man had guest starred in Kesar. And he saw that stuff and saw I could draw Peter Parker and saw I could draw a serviceable Spider-Man. So he offered me Marvel team-up work. First was a fill-in, and then he hired me on as... It doesn't really look like it because of how short a period of time it was and the way things were published. But I was the regular artist on Marvel team-up for a brief, New York minute. And so when he was my editor, he did a show here in town. And I remember sitting out to dinner with Tom and Jackson Geis, back when he was Butch Geis, working on Micronauts. And we all just kind of sat and BS'd and talked about comics and what kind of comics we like and, how we felt about Marvel and Marvel characters and all this. And in that conversation, Tom and I came to realize that we liked the same kind of comics and were fans of the same types of work and all that. We didn't actually work together. It was Danny Fingeroth who put us together on Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
And we were familiar with each other, being editor, freelancer, and such. In fact, at the time when I decided to leave the studio to do Amazing, Tom at that point had become kind of a mentor to me, I guess, in some ways, having been my editor on Team Up. And he actually called and said, that it was time for me. He wanted to have a conversation with me, and he wanted to say that, I do feel that you're going to have to pick one or the other. If you want to stay in animation, stay in animation. But if you want to do comics, and he was pretty open about the fact that he was kind of hoping I would pick comics. He said, but you might want to think about going to it full time. And I had pretty much already made the decision, but he certainly helped reinforce it. And I said, well, do you mind if I go comics full time on a book with you? Because they had offered us both Spider-Man, and he went, oh, so you've already decided? I said, yeah, pretty much. And he goes, well, don't I feel like a jackass? I said, not at all. It's a much needed affirmation that, if you think I can do this, then that's really helpful to know that, that I've got your support. So, and then we, went together on Spider-Man and found out how much we enjoyed it. And mostly it's a terrific. It's become a terrific friendship. And professionally, I just respect the hell out of the work he does. Mm-hmm. He's a very good writer. He's a structure guy. He's all of his. He never just writes stream of consciousness. You know, he has a theme and a point to his stories, and he stays on point, and he always is telling you a story. And I respect the hell out of that. I enjoy reading his stuff, and I enjoy working on his stuff. And he's also just very, very open to collaboration, and has, pretty much anything I know about storytelling and successful collaboration has come from my partnership with DeFalco. And to this day, there are a few. There's nobody I would rather work with than Tom. But that's not always the case. I mean, the gentleman I'm working with now on this new Sid Comics project is very creative, wildly creative, and he has a really kind of an interesting, fun voice, and he's really interested in doing, again, the same kind of thing Tom and I were. This guy's very oriented. He grew up in the 70s and loved the Marvel comics of the 70s, and that's what he's looking for, and that's very much my wheelhouse, and I can kind of unapologetically do the kind of comics that I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With motion lines and big impact marks and all that kind of stuff that nobody does anymore because it's too comic booky.
Gotcha. Like as far as the creative process goes, working with Tom DeFalco and this new guy, is it how does it get to the page? I guess like do you get the story first? Like from Tom DeFalco, it sounds like you did. Like he wrote the story.
You always get some kind of story first, whether it's full script or whether it's a plot synopsis, which is what's considered Marvel style. And I'm not sure how much that's done anymore, to tell you the God's honest truth. I think most of the industry has swung back towards full script, which it's kind of, I find it kind of a shame, because I thought Stan's innovation of doing a plot synopsis and relying on the illustrator more to tell the story visually was, a simple kind of genius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
But
when you're telling a story through art, it makes sense to have the artist telling the story.
Exactly. And there's just an amount of common sense logic there that can't be denied. In DeFalco's case, we would discuss plots. If I had a suggestion, I made suggestions, and we might get around to them, we might not. We both keep notebooks on story ideas and everything for Spider-Man and Spider-Girl and all the other stuff we worked on. And we'd have the story idea would always come from a discussion. On Spider-Man, it usually came from a discussion of the characters. It usually came from a discussion of Peter Parker and how he's feeling about what's going on in his life right now and everything. But whoever the idea came from, however it was hammered into shape, Tom would then go off and structure it as a plot synopsis. And, so I'd be working off some kind of printed matter. We did an issue of Thunderstrike, which was probably more the way they did it back in the old days of Marvel, where I happened to be in New York for something else, and we sat in his office, and we plotted, I think it was issue 15 of Thunderstrike, just in the same room together. And we kind of got it, we worked out the story beats, and I made a couple of notes, and went home and drew it, and you get the impression that that's more the way Stan used to do it with a lot of his guys, whether it was a phone conversation or whether it was an in-person meeting. And that was fun, and a little scary, because you have less of a structure to work from, and you're responsible for more. With this gentleman I'm working with right now, since he's a TV writer, and he's he knows very specifically what he wants, and he does have a certain visual sense given that he's from TV. So he is giving me much tighter plots. He's actually kind of giving me their synopsises, but they kind of break down to like a paragraph or a line for each panel, and I rarely go off book unless I really feel that there's a better way to handle it, I don't go off book, and I follow what he does. Then he looks at the thumbnails, and he'll come back with some notes, and usually those notes are, you can cut that panel, you can cut this panel, it turned out to be more than I needed, and all this, and I don't want to upset the boat on him, because when he goes into script, he needs to know what to expect. Because when we were originally doing the first issue, we did a much looser plot synopsis, and I sent him my first batch of thumbnails, and his brain short-circuited.
Oh, wow.
He had no idea how to script it or how to approach it, because being from television, he was picturing it in his head.
Oh, yeah.
It's much easier until we get more in line with our own rhythms and everything, and it takes time for a team to come together. I'm working on the third issue for him at the moment. I'm finishing up the second and working on the third, and I think we're coming more, like the second issue went much easier than the first issue, and the third issue would go that much easier than the second, as we get used to how we do things. But yeah, that first time when he saw my thumbnails, he just had no idea how to approach it. So we decided to go with something tighter. And I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I mean, you tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you. My job is to draw what other people are telling me to draw. So I don't have a lot of ego involved in that. In fact, this whole new gig came about because he wanted to hire Sal Buscema to draw the comic. Again, being from the 70s, being a 70s Marvel child, and Sal does not enjoy the blank page anymore.
Oh, no.
If any of us have a finite number of pages in us that we're going to, that you pencil them and you go, okay, I'm done. Who would have hit it besides Sal Buscema? Maybe, Jack Kirby might have hit it, but Sal Buscema probably hit it. So he doesn't really enjoy that as much, and so he said, if you get Ron Frenz to pencil it, I'll be happy to ink it, but I'm not interested in penciling it. This guy was fortunately aware of my Spider-Girl stuff and liked my Spider-Girl stuff, so that's how I got this gig, was through Sal, and Sal is inking it, and so we're having a lot of fun. And when the books finally break out and are released sometime next year, hopefully everybody will enjoy it, and I know I'm enjoying it. It's called Sit Comics, because he works on, he came up through working on sitcoms.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, he was an assistant on Seinfeld, was one of his first jobs.
Oh, get out of here. Wow.
Yeah, he's worked on some stuff across the pond, and he's done TV shows over here in the States, and he's currently the executive producer and writer on KC Undercover on the Disney Channel for Disney.
Oh, yeah.
My son watches.
With Zendaya, yeah. So, he's, but he loves comics. He wants to do comics. He's got an entire line that he's got freelancers working on right now. Some of them are humor books. A handful of them are superhero titles. And his name is Darren Henry. And he's got a social media presence. Sit Comics, one word, is out there on Facebook. And some of the titles are available on Comixology and all that. But as far as the actual print rollout, we're looking at next year sometime, either spring or summer of next year.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, because you had some of those at the Pittsburgh show, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was showing. He did a print run of the Blue Baron, is the name of the character.
That's it. Yeah.
For Central PA, and we did a series of shop appearances because it's myself and Glenn Whitmore is the colorist on the titles, who I worked with on the Superman books, and oh my God. Because one of his other books is called Super Suckers. It's kind of an Archie-style vampire story.
Oh, okay.
And it's being drawn by one of the guys that, Jeff Schultz is drawing that for him, who's was working for Archie for years during the Archie stuff. He's doing Super Suckers. And so the three or four of us did some shop appearances in Central PA, which is where Darren is originally from, and we kind of introduced those books, test marketed those books, and we've been getting a lot of positive response. So I'm really looking forward to the rollout and seeing what the general audience thinks. And I could be happy doing Blue Baron for years now if the marketplace decides that's what they want to see. So.
Nice. Like as far as the market kind of goes, like, because we were kind of mentioning that you sent him clips and stuff like that. How is the that whole process, like the creative process, like you drawing, has that changed? Is now that things are more digital? Do you still work on pencil and paper, and then
I do.
Do you? Okay.
Not everybody does, but yes, I still do. I mean, if you do the math, and I started in the early 80s in my 20s, I'm 56 now. And, Sal and I work well together because we still do things on paper. And I still send him the boards, and the ink's right on the boards. But so much of the stuff is being done digitally now. People are penciling digitally, but even if they pencil on boards, they're scanning and sending those to the inkers so they can output it in blue line or digitally ink it. So yes, the computers are taking over, but I really like working with the blank page, and I do a set of smaller thumbnail drawings of each page, so I know where I'm going with it, and get the storytelling set up for the entire length of the book, so you don't run out of panels at the end or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then put it up on the boards, and still doing it the old way. Sal has actually acknowledged technology when it comes to he will have his pages scanned and sent to a server for some of the major publishers now. He doesn't send off the actual boards as much as he used to. Most inkers don't anymore, actually. There's been a couple of inkers I've worked with, and they said, well, you can just scan them and send them. And I said, well, if it's all the same to you, I'd just as soon have you ink them. Off the boards, but they will scan and send the inked version, and they'll just hold on to the pages, and they'll do the divide and send me back my share of pages and things like that. So, but yeah, from what I understand, a lot of people are, even the pencils, everything just exists in the digital world now, which is really going to put a bite into the collector market. I'll tell you that.
Cause
we discussed this before amongst ourselves. I'm a very tactile person, and I can appreciate the digital comics, but I like to have the actual comic in front of me, and I like the smell of comics and everything that reminds me of
that's creepy, but I agree with you. There's nothing I enjoy more. In fact, I've been going through a phase lately where there's a couple of comic shops that I go to, and they have long boxes with the comics of my youth, which I probably have copies of around my apartment somewhere, but going and looking for them would be a real chore. So I go into these shops and I go through their $3 boxes, or there's one guy that anything under $50 he has in long boxes, so I can find stuff from the 60s from when I was a kid, from like 67 to 68, DCs and Marvels. I can find them for like $6 or $7. And I've been flipping through them and finding those, and really enjoying rereading some of the books of my youth. I also get that by buying the DC showcases and the Marvel Essentials, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just, I've been really, I've been going all the way back to my first exposure to comics, which was like early Batman comics and Superman comics and World's Finest, and just rereading some of those, just being charmed to death. I mean, those things were so clever, and I can still remember what it felt like to experience that stuff for the first time and go, God, someday I would love to be able to draw like this. I mean, I can remember certain phases in my life. When the Aquaman cartoon came on in the late 60s, I just was in love with it. I just loved everything about it. And I can remember very clearly sitting there and going, God, I hope someday I can draw as well as these guys draw, that kind of thing. And I was very simple-minded about it. know. I'll leave it up to you whether I ever accomplished that.
Oh, without a doubt, you did.
But I was very single-minded about it. Like I said, from the time I was 7 or 8, if you asked little Ron Frenz what he wanted to do, it was to grow up, work for Marvel Comics, and draw Spider-Man. And I was very directed and just very blessed to have accomplished that by the time I was like 25, 26. So I peaked early, and it's just been downhill ever since.
Just as a quick follow-up, who are your biggest influences, do you feel?
Who do you think were my biggest influence?
Well, I feel like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby are two that stick out from your run on Thor and your run on Spider-Man. So
who else? There's a couple more obvious ones. There's at least 2 more really obvious ones.
2 more really obvious ones.
Oh, come on. John and Sal Buscema.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
John Romita,
Yeah.
Romita, yeah.
Those guys just put it all together. I mean, Kirby, Eisner, Ditko. I really feel that in the last several years that a lot of what comics has become are poor man's movies. We've been trying too hard to be movies now. And I think we've kind of moved a little bit away from what comics does really well. And if you look at the Kirbys and the Eisners and what was perfected, this is all my opinion, of course, but what was perfected at Marvel in the 60s and 70s was what comics do really well and uniquely, because there are things that comics can do, the things that comics can get away with. Like if you think about the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Fantastic Fours, if you read that dialogue out loud, it doesn't hold up. I mean, it's not. It would be very hard to even pull that off in a cartoon or in live action verbatim, because there's something about comics that is translated through your eyeballs and your brain, but it's very melodramatic. It's very, everybody's moving, everybody's in motion, especially in a Kirby comic, things like that. What's always fascinating to me with the characters being translated into film now is that if you take 5 fans and put them in a room and ask them to cast a Fantastic Four movie, every single person is going to have a different idea of who should be cast as even though it's a visual medium. Put 5 people in a room and say who should play Peter Parker, you're going to get 5 different answers.
That is very true.
That is very true,
to me, because that is part of the engagement in a comic book. Even though it's visual, you're not being spoon-fed. Your imagination is still a huge part of what's going on.
Yeah. It is. I agree. I think it's totally it's a totally different type of media. Like with the the internal monologue you have of the characters and stuff like that. I don't think that can be done well on a show or even on a movie.
Like thought balloons. I mean, for decades, comics survived with thought balloons, and now the internal monologue has become captions. But come on, let's be honest. I mean, any kind of internal monologue like that is difficult to pull off. I mean, there have been a few movies that have been able to pull it off, but that's unique to it. The way action is, and again, I'm talking like comics of the 60s and 70s and 80s. The way action is portrayed. The way Jack Kirby would kind of use the human figure as a design element. It was it's amazing. It's dynamic. It's something that can't be verbatim recreated live action. I mean, you can come close and you can create that kind of kineticism, and they do it very successfally, I think, in the Marvel movies. In X2, where the attack of Nightcrawler at the White House. I mean, that's something that was just visceral and exciting and engrossing, and you couldn't do it the same way in a comic. But it successfully translated to film that kind of kineticism and that kind of action and that kind of movement. So, I mean, it can be done, and quite often is done successfully. But comics are comics, man. They're a very separate thing, and I don't think you're using the medium to its best extent if you're just doing storyboards for movies. You know, if you're framing everything like a movie, or if you're having long talking head sequences like a movie, you know, those are the things that kind of lose me, is when you just do a long talking sequence and yet the characters aren't doing anything. Because even in a film, you know, you take Age of Ultron, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers are having their debate about what's going on with the Avengers. They're chopping wood while they're doing it. And that wonderful moment when Steve shows that he's getting, you know, that he's making his point in the conversation by tearing a stump in half. You know, I mean, that's what we should be doing in comics. You know, I mean, there should be something, since it's a visual medium, there should be something interesting going on visually while they're talking. I mean, back in the day, the X-Men used to discuss philosophy while they were working out the Danger Room.
Right.
Or Spider-Man would be having a debate with the Green Goblin while they're fighting over the city, you know. But now we've lost that sense of wonder, and now, you know, they just sit and talk. And it's like, well, that's great if it's a radio script, but come on, guys, it's a comic book.
How do you think can we get back to that kind of writing in comics? What is it that young writers can start doing, or getting back to that way of storytelling?
You're out of my pay grade now, I'm afraid. Because the simple fact is, and this is something I've become very aware of over the last several years, is that we all love the comics that were of the first comics we read. Okay? I will always fault on the side of comics from the late 60s and 70s, because those are the first books I read that made me want to do what I'm doing. And I'm always going to value what they offered more than what's being done currently, or more than what was done before that. And in the same way, though, kids, and there's not a lot of kids still reading comics, but when somebody discovers the comics of the 2000s or the 2010s, that's what they love. And when they, you know, I mean, quite honestly, when DeFalco and I got back together and we did that Thunderstrike miniseries back a few years back, there were a couple of reviews that were basically saying, who is this for? Because it looks kind of like a 70s comic, but they're dealing with some more adult themes. Who is this for? I don't get it. And if it's not exactly what they expect a comic book to look like or a comic book to be, it doesn't do well. You know, I mean, unfortunately, the Thunderstrike miniseries kind of fell through the cracks because it wasn't part of the big story arc right then. It was, you know, I mean, it's very difficult to break out in today's market. You know, and it's really a part of this larger conversation people are having that involves politics and opinions and the way people interact now in social media and everything, is that everybody likes what they like and they stay in their lane. And they're not really open to experimenting with other people, you know, the way other people are trying to do things, or even being exposed. I mean, to me, even if you discover comics today, why aren't you curious about where they came from? Because, you know, I did a lot of reading of comics from the 50s and the 30s and stuff. It's fascinating to me to read the original Batman stories.
Oh, yeah,
and to see the impetus
yeah.
of the character, or the original Superman stories, and to be aware of the history of the character, and early Marvel comics. You know, the Steve Ditko and the Jack Kirby monster and horror stories that they did, and you know, where these illustrators came from, you know, and how they've evolved, and how but I'm also involved professionally, so I can see that might not be where your love of the hobby might go, you know.
Yeah.
But there really is this issue now where people aren't really reaching outside their own experience to try new things. And with the market being what it is, you know, everything's selling a little. It's just one of those situations where I don't know how you would do it. You know, I mean, I'm hoping that with sitcomics, Darren Henry's voice is so fresh that, you know, It's kind of like the gentleman that did, and I'm not sure I can remember his name, but that did Heroes. Remember the first season of Heroes? Everybody
Yeah.
Because that guy didn't read comic books. He was doing a riff on superheroes. Yeah, because at one point he wanted to create a character who could control magnetism. And somebody said, well, there is a character like that. It's Magneto. He's in the movies. And he went, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. So they didn't do it. So he was not a comic book reader as a kid or anything like that. Darren hasn't read comics since he was a kid. And he has these very wonderful, fresh ideas. And when we design characters, he sends me this disparate reference, of could you try like a helmet like this, and goggles like this, and maybe some boots like this. And it's fun as all get out for me to take all this disparate stuff and try to bring it into a design. So he's got this, very much 2016, 2017 take on these characters. They're very fresh takes on these characters, and he's not bogged down by knowing every character and going, well, I can't do that because that's sort of kind of like this, and I can't do that. And because of that, it's very fresh. I'm really enjoying, his characters and his approach, and I'm hoping everybody else will too because of that different voice. Plus the fact this industry just loves somebody coming in from TV. And saying, I'm going to take a shot at comics, and everybody, all you just have to say Seinfeld, and people will at least try it.
I can see that.
So I'm kind of hoping that helps too. And nobody's going, Ron Frenz, isn't he dead? And yes, I am. Buy the book because I'm penciling it from beyond the grave. That's cool.
That is cool. As far as like talking more about the industry, I guess today, it does seem like the comics are like almost more geared towards the movies instead of the other way around. Now it seems like now, like when somebody draws like Tony Stark, for example, they kind of looks like they try to draw him to look more like Robert Downey Jr.
Well, are you seeing that as a negative?
I don't know. I find that interesting.
Well, because I don't think it's wrong to do that. I was one of the guys that when Disney bought Marvel, I smiled and I went, oh, cool. Maybe we'll actually start. Maybe it'll actually help with marketing and all this kind of stuff, which it really hasn't yet. I kind of hope it still does.
Yeah.
But to make the books more relatable more people are going to see the movies than are ever going to pick up a comic book.
Yeah, that's probably
so
true.
So if people go to the movies and then they come into a comic shop and pick up the comic book, you want them to see something that is going to, relate to the comic, or to the movie they just saw. Whether it's, you influence the design of the character that way or so. I wish they were seeing more content that reflected the movies, to tell you the truth. And by that, I just mean that all the characters aren't irredeemable pricks, because it's just stunning to me now that they're writing for adults how all the characters have feet of clay. It's amazing to me. But when you think about it, if you would have gone to the first Spider-Man movie and really enjoyed the first Spider-Man movie, your best bet going into a comic shop would have been to pick up Marvel Essentials. The 60s John Romita run would have been your best bet to see something that looked like that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can't say I blame them for trying to be available in that way, that if somebody comes in from seeing the movie and wants to read Guardians of the Galaxy, that it's going to at least somehow relate to the movie they just saw.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because of course, when they said Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm an old man. I'm thinking, really, Martin X and Charlie 27?
When they first announced it, that's what I thought too.
Well, I was the same way when they announced the Losers, though. I didn't know about the second generation of Losers. I'm thinking, oh, the World War II stuff, great. that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm a little behind the curve on that kind of thing. So to have me talk about the current industry would be a little unfair because I'm not completely aware of what's going on these days. At the time in the 80s, with DeFalco being highly placed in the company and me being a little more involved in monthly books, I mean, things have changed, but it was always frustrating even then because, comic retailers, God love them, they are just trying to keep their doors open, man. And during the 90s when we had kind of a boom, they were just happy if the books moved out. We were losing sales. Thunderstrike sold really, really well. Thunderstrike wasn't canceled because of low sales. It was canceled because of that whole Perlman thing. But what was happening during the run of Thunderstrike is that they'd get the books in on Wednesday, they'd sell through by Friday, and they wouldn't reorder.
Oh.
Because they were just happy that they sold through.
Yeah.
And that was killing us. I mean, you can't increase sales if they're not the next week ordering one more copy or two more copies, and seeing how that goes. But there's so much product that it's very hard for them to stay ahead of the game on that kind of thing, And to this day, it's why Marvel doesn't have more of an interface with the retailers. First you decide, okay, the only way people are going to be able to get our books is to go through these independent retailers scattered all over the country. And then second, we're not going to interface with them at all. We're not going to give a shit what they think. We're not going to send out surveys. We're not going to ask them what we're doing right and doing wrong. We're just going to let it run the way it runs. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I kind of...
And I've heard that complaint from easily a half dozen comics retailers over my time in the industry.
Yeah, I kind of miss back in the 80s and the 90s comics. At the back of the comics, you'll have fans interacting with the writers, hey, I like issue blah blah blah, 19 or something like that. Now it's just straight comic, and there's no, like you said, there's no really interaction with the fans. And maybe that's with the different social medias or whatever. But
yeah, that's what they're trying to. They're supposedly that shifted over to social media, and Dan Slott has had varying success with Twitter, things like that. I mean, I think that immediacy has kind of, I'm not talking about Dan specifically because I really don't follow Dan on Twitter or anybody on Twitter, but the immediacy of artists posting things on their blogs or on their Facebook pages and things being spoiled as quickly as they are, I don't think that's a good thing for any kind of serialized fiction. I don't think it's good for TV. I don't think it's good for there's nothing good about a big twist in a TV show being spoiled because somebody got a picture of that actor on set.
Yeah.
Was supposed to be dead or something. You know what I mean?
Takes away a little bit of the magic of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was reading comics, I was waiting every month for the next issue to come out, and I was, thank God.
Yeah.
I didn't have somebody showing up at my house going, oh, and by the way, John Romita's only going to be doing 2 more issues, and then he's going to go over and do this, and it's like, just shut up. Just let me enjoy what's going on in the book.
Exactly. I remember reading comics and just, making sure that when I opened it up, I was at the very first page so I didn't ruin anything for myself.
Exactly.
That might have been,
Yeah, and I being more into the art, I would occasionally ruin something for myself because I would flip through. I mean, I always liked comics back when I was a kid, and we did it one time, at least once on Thor. I mean, we might have done it more than once, but we say, don't flip to the end or you'll ruin the greatest shock ending you can read.
I remember.
We did it on Thor when we did the Don Blake as Mephisto review, and it's like, try not to ruin this for yourself. Don't just flip casually. Start at page 1, sit down. DeFalco will even do that in the opening captions sometimes. Sit down, crack a soda, get your favorite snack, and let's have some fun for 10-15 minutes, that kind of thing. So, of course, I don't think most comics read 10-15 minutes anymore either, so,
That's probably true, too.
That's true. used to get a lot more story.
Yeah, it seemed, yeah.
Oh my gosh, this stuff I'm reading from the late 60s. Everything back then, entertainment was so much more dense. I mean,
Yeah.
at some point, turn on TV Land or turn on MeTV and watch an old Bonanza. These stories never go where you think they're going to go. I mean, you know, they do the setup in the first 10 minutes, and on today's dramas, that's it. You know, whatever's going on in the first 10 minutes, you're going to resolve that situation by the end of the hour, okay? But in Bonanza, in these old Bonanzas, you start in one situation in the first 10, 15 minutes, then you follow a secondary character, then it becomes a different story, and it's a completely different story by the time you get to the end of the hour. And that is just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because you were engaged as a viewer. You weren't just waiting for the end. You were engaged. Going, wow, I didn't see that coming. Okay. Oh, you know, so it was, they were dramas, but they were almost written like mysteries, where there were different reveals and different left turns, and it kept the viewer engaged. And they felt like, well, we're going to be, if we expected to sit there for an entire hour, we need to engage them. You know, that kind of, you know, God forbid you do that. And that's the other thing I enjoy about working with DeFalco, is that you get a story. You get a beginning, a middle, and an end with a writer like Tom. And one of my things I was really gratified to see is when they started collecting the Amazing Spider-Girl run as trade paperbacks. The first trade paperback worked so well because everybody was doing the 6-issue arcs. But what we did was we did 6 issues that each worked as an individual, 6 individual stories. But if you read it as a trade paperback, there are things that are resolved in the arc. You know,
nice.
Not only do you get to the end of the 6th issue and you have an ending, but you get to the end of each individual issue and have an ending, but you get to the end of the trade paperback, and it's kind of like watching a movie with 6 acts, you know, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And I was really proud of our run on Amazing Spider-Girl, also the entire run of Spider-Girl, what we were able to accomplish, and we had great loyal fans. I mean, it was just it was a terrific experience interacting with the fans online and then on the Spider-Girl message board and conventions. And they're just some terrific people who enjoyed that book, appreciated it for what it was. And which, you know, that right there is proof that any kind of comic can survive if you can, you know, keep your audience engaged. You know, I mean, Spider-Girl was kind of off in its own little corner, and it was never part of the big crossovers. But we had an audience that kept us alive for 13, 14 years. And, you know, it was the longest running solo title headlined by a girl. You know, so I mean, we were doing something right.
Definitely. That's awesome. And speaking of the like big story arcs and crossovers and stuff, was that ever? Because you know, it seemed like they'd always try to do like an annual type of event that involved several different comic books. How do you feel about those types of things? It seems like sometimes they would like force that into a comic book.
I think they do them too much now. They do them so much now that I don't think they're as special as they should be. And what shocks me is that they will get an uptick when a character is killed. And it's like, guys, stop supporting that.
Right.
They're going to stay dead. And even if that writer, you know, is absolutely positively sure that that character is dead, he's not going to be on the book forever, and the next guy that comes in is going to say, oh, no, he's not. He's alive. You know, that kind of thing. So it's just gotten to the point of ridiculousness where the fans don't even yawn anymore when somebody dies. And that's depressing. I mean, so could we stop doing that? Just put a moratorium on that just because it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah. I'd rather have a fresh story take or something like just you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Character development rather than destruction.
Exactly.
I mean, Captain America Civil War got criticized because nobody died.
Yeah. and I actually think that's probably what made that movie the best. Was that nobody.
That's one of the things I enjoyed about it because it made me more concerned that Rhodey recovers. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
and the drama there. I mean, I own it on, of course everybody does, I guess, but I went out and bought it on Blu-ray, and when I watch it now, I don't find myself going to the airport fight as much as I thought I would. I love the dynamics between Steve and Tony in that film.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite scenes is when Steve's ready to sign. He gives him the pen, and all that kind of stuff, and he's ready to sign until he finds out that Wanda's under lock and key, and it's, God damn it, Tony.
Yeah.
Where we started, that kind of thing. And it's just, what a terrific movie. It just really was engaging as hell.
It is. It's probably my favorite Marvel movie.
I can understand that. I mean, certainly as a Marvel fan, you're sitting there during the airport fight, just...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Getting
like an idiot.
Just getting to see Spider-Man interact with those characters made me so happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right there with you. I'm really looking forward to Homecoming.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We saw a little trailer of...
Teaser trailer came out today.
I saw that teaser, yeah. I mean, is it tonight on Kimmel that you're supposed to run the trailer or something?
I don't know. I didn't hear when the actual trailer was. I just watched the 17-second teaser and was giddy.
See, I
found it online.
On Kimmel, I think maybe tonight.
Oh, that's fantastic.
They're going to run it like they did the Doctor Strange trailer.
Oh, yeah.
Check that out.
He's ABC, which is Disney. So
get the tie-ins.
Yeah.
Of course, that's still Sony, but now Sony's riding on their coattails. So.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness they are, though.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your Thor run. You had quite a long run on Thor, like what?
7 years.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Because we were talking, and I'm like, man, I don't think I've held a job for 7 years.
and believe me, that was one of the things that was so wonderful about it. I have never been. The greatest thing, too, looking back on it, is that I don't regret that I didn't appreciate it at the time, because I appreciated it every day.
That's awesome.
It was just a wonderfully creative time with DeFalco. The character is endless. He came up with the twist of Eric becoming Thor and re-energized us for another few years. And of course, Thunderstrike came out of that. Ralph Macchio is a terrifically creative editor who lets you do your thing. And so the whole 7 years was just an incredible fun time. I mean, the other time that came really close to that was working on anytime I'm working with DeFalco, it's like that, but working on A Next was just so much fun, because he was editing the other titles, and so I had that much more story input, and the stories were kind of reflecting some of my sensibility, maybe even a little bit more than some of our other stuff. And it was just such a joy to take those characters and keep coming up with some thoughts and ideas, figuring out where they go from here. And I was a Thor fan because I was a Kirby fan, because I was a John Buscema fan, so I always followed Thor, but I never really saw myself as doing Thor. DeFalco didn't think he could do Thor because he saw himself as being much more qualified to do like the street level characters, like your Spider-Mans and your Ben Grimms and things like that. But he ended up really enjoying it as well, and coming in after Walt, we knew we couldn't do Walt, so we just kind of went back to the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby sandbox. And what a fantastic place to play! I mean, the Marvel Universe is just, in the '80s like that. It was a much. It sounds funny saying it now because it was so much bigger than it was in the '60s, but it was a leaner sandbox back then. You had guys like Mark Grunwald who were keeping track of things, and we were doing the Handbook of the Marvel Universe. And,
I love those.
I love those.
There were the occasional little crossovers that had nothing, like when in Walt Thor when he opened the Cask of Ancient Winters, and at the end of a bunch of other Marvel books, it snowed at the end, and it just snowed in the other books in the middle of the summer, and you either explained it or you didn't. I mean, in Spider-Man, we used it as a punchline for a joke,
Nice.
Bagman and stuff. That kind of communication between the editors and between the creative people was just, it was there for fun. It wasn't there so we could do yet another big epic crossover where people die and everybody's depressed, that kind of thing. The stuff that really gets me is, like Submariner having his head torn off, or Submariner killed Black Panther, or Black Panther killed Submariner, or something like this. The whole Illuminati idea.
Oh, it's from
the beginning, that kind of thing, and I understand. I'm from a different era, and this stuff isn't being written for me, and I get that. So I don't mouth off about it that often, other than to say it's not really my taste, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you.
I think sometimes they're going.
You are welcome to mouth off because you have a podcast.
I think everyone's trying to do the whole Dark Knight.
Trying to make it darker.
Yeah.
See, that's what I was afraid of when they did Watchmen and The Dark Knight. I was like, please don't let superhero movies go this way, because then I won't be able to enjoy the movies either.
Yeah. And that's like,
I'm glad to see they didn't.
Yeah. The only thing like with the Batman versus Superman stuff, it just seems like when DC does their films, they seem to try to make them too dark as well. I don't know.
I think they're seeing that the comics audience is mostly adults, and so they're not. I mean, I don't have a problem with adults reading comics. I mean, I read comics up through the 80s and 90s and stuff. So I don't have any problem with comics being readable by adults. But the fact that we are now producing product as an industry that kids can't go anywhere near doesn't make any sense to me, because the whole industry is built on wish fulfillment. It's built on the childhood fantasy of power and trying to, be able to help people and all this kind of jazz. And so the idea that kids aren't welcome amazes me and dismays me. Stan cracked the nut. He was able to write things that functioned on those two different levels. The same way when I was growing up, you could watch Star Trek and enjoy it as a colorful action story, and then you 15 years later, you go back and rewatch those episodes, and you're going, holy shit, they're talking about Vietnam?
Yeah.
That's, Stan cracked that nut for comics, and it was, it worked. So I don't understand why we're not challenging ourselves to still do that kind of material, where these characters function for the kids, function for younger kids and 11 and 12-year-olds and teens, and that we're hurting ourselves by not I mean, we also, in a way, we also kind of hurt ourselves by going into the retail stores exclusively, because I'm not sure I would have discovered comics as a kid if I would have had to go to one of the comic book stores around here to find them. I mean, when I was growing up, they were everywhere.
I used to get them every week at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On my way home from school.
One of my earliest interactions with comic books was the food store that my folks used to go to shop every week. We were allowed to sit at the comic book rack and flip through comic books, and when they were done shopping and they came back to get us, my brother and I could pick one, And then when we became avid comic readers, we didn't really have an allowance, but my dad would spring for comics every week. We'd go to 3 different places. We'd go to a National Record Mart, a magazine stand, and a Sun Drug with a spinner rack, and we'd get our comics every week, and he was willing to pay for them if we did our chores and all that kind of stuff. Of course, back then, comics weren't more than a quarter either. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's true.
But it really is, we've kind of painted ourselves into this corner now where, kids can discover the characters through children's books and all this, but, whether or not that evolves into a love of the form, what are these kids going to read when they're, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14? I mean, that used to be prime comic book reading time.
That was definitely my age.
So now there's Disney books for real young kids, and then there's stuff that's dealing with subject matter that isn't appropriate yet. So we're losing them. We're losing them to any number of different distractions, that they can spend their money on in the meantime.
Right. I have a nephew that is around about 6 or 7, and my brother knows nothing about comic books, so they come talk to me about it. And yeah, it is hard to kind of steer them which comics to read, because like you said, there are the Disney XD, Spider-Man and Avengers, and then there's the comics that are like the regular universe, and it's kind of it's a little too adult for him to read right now. And like you said, it's how are they? You're going to get lost when we're old enough to not read the Disney XDs, but not too young to read regular comics. So,
and that age group is when I was into it the most.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would agree totally.
I just read when I was doing my little thing through the long boxes, I bought new copies of the last. There was a 3 or 4 part story. It was Roy Thomas's last arc on the Avengers before he left, with Rich Buckler and Joe Sinnott, where they fought the Sentinels. And it was 1972, I think, or something. And so I would have been 12 years old. And I sat and read that whole arc again. And my God, was that fun.
Oh, yeah.
Roy was at the top of his game. And Sinnott was at the top of his game. Buckler did a beautiful job on it. And, it had, all those stories, they were very dense. And they were quoting, things that adults would recognize. It's very much that whole Star Trek thing. You go back and read it, and now, when I was 12, I had no idea what Lafayette, we are here, was a reference to. Roy would make, and Stan would make those literary references all the time, but the story didn't hinge on them. The kid could, as a kid, you could still read them and enjoy the hell out of the story and go, maybe you looked it up and found out something you didn't know before. I remember there was an issue of Thor called Conflagration, and I had no idea what conflagration meant when I was 11 or 12, but I looked it up, and there you go.
Yeah.
Wow, comics as a possibly educational tool. Where might that go?
Right.
I was trying to take that class in college.
That would be terrific. I mean, they used to be a lot more but we've lost that age group now. So, we're not. Like I said, it's just my, in my humble opinion type stuff. I mean, but yeah, if we're talking about my vibe, I really am. That's the other thing that this guy's doing with Sitcomics is he's trying to do all age comics that have a nice modern voice, and he's going to be rolling out humor books first because that's what he's known for in his in his CV. So he's going to roll out Sitcomics with some humor books because there's not that many humor books in the market these days, and then the second wave he'll introduce some of the superhero titles and stuff. So it makes a lot of sense. He seems to be really level-headed and logical about how he's approaching it, and I can only hope it's a big success because I will benefit from it, but I also am just a big fan of what he's doing. So
we look forward to seeing that for sure.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Well, like I said, you can go on Comixology and you can read some of them online already. But yeah, the book. I mean, they're actually, what he's planning on doing is bi-monthly 64-page comic books.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Online, they're being released 3 chapters, as 3 chapters. But when they're released in print, they're going to be called what he's calling binge books, where you will get a 64-page story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, it's for $5.99.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's
a good deal.
The business model at this point, and if it clicks, it could be a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
This is Rick back again. This concludes part 1 of our 2-part podcast with Ron Frenz. Make sure you come back and check out part 2. And also check us out on allofmyissues.com, at allofmyissues on Twitter, and find us on Instagram and Tumblr as well. And you can always email us at allofmyissues@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.